there, neighbors. It's Nicole Fetter, your local Arizona realtor. Today, we are going to talk about the current real estate market and why we are not currently in a real estate market bubble, nor are we going to see a real estate market bubble in the near future. I know with those huge equity gains feeling so similar to those that happened back in 2005 to 2008, it is hard to believe. However, it was said that back in 2005 to 2008, the housing market crash was caused by bad mortgage lending. So let's go ahead and take a look at the mortgage lending that was happening back in 2005 and caused the crash and compare it to what's going on today in 2022. Back in 2005, lenders were doing subprime mortgages. These were loans they gave to people that had bad credit and a history of not paying their bills on time. Clearly, subprime loans are going to be a higher foreclosure risk than the current lending that's going on right now, where you have to have good credit scores and a good history of paying your bills to currently get a loan. 100% financed mortgages. You could get a mortgage loan that was 100% of the purchase price, meaning the buyer didn't have to put any money into a down payment to purchase a house. If those buyers got the seller to place seller concessions, which is what was happening between 2005, those buyers didn't have to bring in a penny to purchase a house. Anyone that's looked into buying a house recently knows the down payment minimum right now is 3%, and in the current market, you're paying your own closing costs, which are going to be 2 to 3%. So you are looking at a minimum of 5% of the purchase price to purchase a home. Back in 2005, that was not the case. Many of these buyers bought their house without putting down a penny to close, and they never made one single mortgage payment before they allowed that house to go into foreclosure. They had zero skin in the game. If you put 5% down on your home, you're much less likely to let it go into foreclosure than if you haven't paid a dime. Short-term and interest-only loans. A lot of people took out these short-term and interest-only loans with the idea that these huge equity gains that we've been seeing were never going to stop or slow down. We know now that wasn't the case. The real estate market is much like the stock markets. It's cyclical. It goes up and down, up and down. So it wasn't a great idea, but when people are in it, they just want to get a little bit of what everybody else is getting. Now, historically speaking, we do know real estate values will come back and you will ultimately make money if you hold your property long enough. If we look back to 2005 to 2008, we saw those huge soaring equity gains. Then we look back to 2009 to 2012, it felt like the bottom was never coming. But it ultimately did, and then we had 2015 to 19, where the market was very stable and people saw 4 to 10% equity gains yearly. Now, if we go back to 1969 all the way through 2009, the average equity gain for a homeowner was 5.4% per year. So historically speaking, we are proving that home values will continue to go up and you will make money, but not necessarily in the short term. You're going to have to hold on to your property long enough to see that happen. Now, let's jump back to short-term and interest-only loans. The problem with these loans is ultimately they require a balloon payment after a certain amount of time, meaning you have 2, 5 years, whatever it is, where you're only paying interest only, but when that term ends, you're required to pay off the loan with a giant balloon payment. Many of us wouldn't have bothered with the mortgage if we had the money to pay off a huge mortgage. So when you can't refinance that loan and get another loan to cover it, then you're in a whole lot of trouble. That is a bad mortgage, a mortgage that's going to cause a lot of foreclosures. Adjustable rate mortgages. These are loans that are fixed for a certain amount of time, and they're either at a low interest rate or they can even be interest only. But after that set amount of time, say 2, 5, 7 years, 3 years, whatever it is, they start adjusting to the current market rate. I know I personally, with a 2.75% interest rate, don't want to jump up to the current market rate of 5.5%, and I know many of you wouldn't either. There's also a lot of other people that couldn't afford to make that mortgage payment if their rate increased. So again, Not a great mortgage to have for the long term. Owner-occupied versus rental properties. Back in 2005 to 2008, people were buying homes saying they were going to be owner-occupied and then planning to just hold them long enough to see some of these huge equity gains and sell it off, making a profit. These houses were left vacant. Nobody was ever living in them. Anybody that's recently bought a home or owns one probably recalls that they were required to disclose if the house was going to be owner-occupied, an investment, rental, second home. These people back in 2005 to 2008 were lying, saying they planned to occupy them, and they just planned to sell them as quickly as they could see a profit and turn them. And to make this situation even worse, investors were selling these properties back and forth to each other, helping inflate that market. That is a big part of what caused bad appraisals. Back in 2005 to 2008, you could use any appraiser you wanted to. So the same appraiser that you had been giving business to for the last 10 years, you could use them to, for an example, buy a house, get that appraised value. So you buy a house for $200,000, you use that appraiser, the value comes in, you're buying at 100%, you don't pay any closing costs. And then you sell that house to your investor friend who buys that house a month later for $250,000. He makes a profit of $50,000, right? And then he sells it to his uncle for $300,000, paying his uncle's closing costs. So he makes a profit of $44,000. And then so on and so forth. We keep going with this profit, all using the same appraiser again and again and again on the same house. And that was completely legal. You could do that. Now appraisers come through a third-party appraisal company, and you have no choice in which appraiser you use. But back then, we do know that eventually somebody's going to be left holding the bag, right? But when you're in it and you're making all that money, $44,000 in a month, you don't think about you being the one left holding the bag. What ultimately happened is it hit whatever person that was. The appraisal couldn't come in because we saw the housing market crash, and it went into foreclosure. But no one ever occupied those houses from turn to turn to turn. Again, very shady mortgage practices, appraisal practices, just a lot of negative things going on. And a house that has never had anybody in it is a much higher risk to go foreclosure than a house that is somebody's home. Let's not forget about my favorite, the stated income loan. That is where a lender gives you a loan based upon the information that you tell them. So you tell them, hey, I work at McDonald's and I make $15,000 a month. And they say, okay, you can afford a mortgage of $1 million. But you actually do work at McDonald's and you make $3,000 a month. So you go, you buy a mortgage, or you buy a house that's $1 million, and you can't afford to make a single payment. But in your head, that's fine, because you plan to sell it after making, just holding it a month, and then you're going to turn it and you're going to make all those huge equity gains that everyone else is seeing. Unfortunately, what happened is the market crashed and your house went into foreclosure like so many other people that couldn't actually afford to pay their mortgage because they had lied about the amount of money they made and the lenders never questioned them. Okay, let's talk about the difference between lending practices now of today, 2022, and those bad lending practices that were happening back in 2005 to 2008. In 2005 to 2008 is when we were seeing the adjustable rate mortgages, interest only, subprime lending, stated income. People were lying about whether they intended to occupy the property or not. Now, 2022, we aren't seeing the subprime loans. People actually have to have good credit and a history of paying their bills to buy a house, which they actually have to put a down payment on. 98% of people buying a house in the current market are paying their own closing costs. There are no stated income loans. We actually have to verify that we make the income that we say we do. As you can see, there's a big difference between the high-risk loans, high foreclosure risk loans that were going on in 2005 to 2008 to the high-quality loans that are going on today where people can actually afford and intend to occupy the property they purchase. If they don't intend to occupy it themselves, they intend to have a renter in there occupying it, helping pay their mortgage. I'm sure there's at least a few of you thinking, okay, Great. So we're not in a real estate market bubble. Then what do all these huge equity gains and the now increasing mortgage rates mean for the future of our real estate market? I do try to keep these videos pretty short, so I'm not going to go into that right now, but I will do another video on the current market value and what it means, what's going on and what it means for the rest of 2022 and our real estate market. So please tune in next week. For now, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Please like and share it with your friends so we can help continue to educate them on the home buying and selling process. And remember,
go better with better. You'll love her forever. She'll get you a home today.